All right, today's guest is a globally recognized leader in memory improvement, brain performance, and accelerated learning, but no one would have predicted that when he was a kid. A serious childhood accident left him with a traumatic brain injury and a significant learning disability, but instead of simply accepting defeat, he set about making up for his shortcomings through an obscene amount of hard work. He began sneaking comic books after bedtime to practice reading, and something about the collision of the words, images, and the superhero mindset spoke to him, and for the first time he began to make progress. But despite this, he continued to struggle, having to work 2 or 3 times as hard as everyone else to achieve lesser results. After exhaustion caused him to fall down a flight of stairs and sustain yet another brain injury, he realized something had to change. If he was going to truly overcome his learning disability, he was going to have to dramatically improve his efficiency at learning itself. This began an obsession with the brain and the how of learning, an obsession he would ultimately turn into quick learning, a revolutionary accelerated learning system that now has a bevy of celebrity clients and students in over 150 countries. His hyper-effective techniques have been sought out by the likes of Virgin, Nike, Zappos, SpaceX, Harvard, and Singularity University, and he has directly trained or shared the stage with such luminary global leaders as Elon Musk, Sir Richard Branson, and the Dalai Lama. His teachings have been featured in prestigious worldwide media, including the New York Times bestseller, Use Your Brain to Change Your Age. Please, help me in welcoming the man best-selling author Steven Kotler calls a superhero whose superpower is learning itself, the host of the phenomenal podcast Quick Brain, Jim Quick. How you doing? Welcome, man.
Good to be here.
It's good to have you here. Talk to me about being the son of immigrant parents.
So my parents immigrated here to the United States from Asia. We grew up like a lot of individuals that work really hard. Grew up in the back of a laundromat, and they had many different jobs. I think one of the things that's important for all of us is just the work ethic. To be able to put in, like you do, the incredible hours as an entrepreneur, as a visionary, to do whatever it takes, because I don't believe that there's necessarily a magic pill, but I think there's a process. And doing the work is very important. I don't want people to believe that there's a silver bullet and all of a sudden you have a great memory, or you have this great success or great relationship or health. And people always ask, what's the one thing I could do? And I always tell people that you have to do most of it. Right? I mean, be smart about it, but you have to put in the work, because a lot of times people see on social media, they see all of the success, but what they don't see is the hustle, right? As Gary Vee talks about, and I think as they say, what you practice in private, they say you're rewarded for in public, right. But you have to do the work, and I think that's where I got my work ethic. The challenge is growing up with a brain injury and labeled the boy with a broken brain. I had to work so much harder as everybody else, and you wonder why you're not getting those results. And so I got my discipline from my parents, and I love them for it. I really say that they are my superheroes. And anything good that's come out of me is really a product of them as setting an example.
What were they telling you as you were going through all of that? I mean, your story really is one of like grit and perseverance, and I think your story would be a lot easier to understand if it had been like really linear. You get the injury and then you like have the magic moment, you figure it out, and it's all roses from there. But you actually end up working your ass off only to then like fall again, literally fall again. Yeah. What are they telling you through that? How are they encouraging you? Yeah. How do they become your superheroes?
It would be really clean. Sometimes life is messy, right? And success is not from just A to B in just a straight line. It goes all over the place. And so I would have loved that my story was, I had this brain injury, and all of a sudden, this accident, and I was bitten by a radioactive elephant. I have this incredible memory, or something like that. But it wasn't quite that. I suffered and struggled. I had the brain injury when I was 5 years old, and I suffered all through elementary school, all through middle school, all through high school, and so it was like a good 14 years and a lot of it was this thing where it's, even as a young age, maybe I was pretending that everything was fine and I'd be struggling. It's kind of like that metaphor of a duck on a pond, and you see it's like all calm and relaxed, but underneath it's just like hustling really, really fast. And people don't always see what's below the iceberg. But for me, I struggled privately. And my parents, because I grew up with these challenges, and I didn't have a lot of people to talk to, because when you feel like you're broken, you don't connect with a lot of people. So on top of everything, I was also painfully shy. I was introverted, but I was also shy and very reserved. And I would always sit in the corner. And I honestly, I've never talked about this publicly, but I ask everybody, you know, what their superpower is. And I feel like that my superpower growing up as an insecure kid who felt like he was broken and taught that by adults, that my superpower was being invisible.
Whoa. Like,
I didn't want to be seen. I mean, I ultimately did want to be seen, and I want to be heard like most of us, and accepted and acknowledged, but I didn't want the spotlight. My parents instilled like this work ethic about working hard, and so I would do a book report, and even though it was more difficult for me, and to the point where I'd be like, okay, I have it, I was done. But if a teacher asked me in high school to present it in front of a class, I would actually lie and say I didn't do it. Wow. And I would take a 0, and because I was so terrified of being in front of a group of people, and I would throw it out on the way out of class, and it was really scary. But my parents always held that there was more, that there was purpose, that there's a reason that I was going through these challenges. I mean, my mother actually went into became a special ed teacher because she just really wanted to help, because nobody knew.
Because of what you went through?
Because of what I went through.
Wow.
And so they were very caring like that, but the challenge is we don't know what we don't know. And they did the best they could to be able to help me, but what they did instill in me was that there was a reason, you know, that through going through struggles, just like when they came to this country, all of us go through struggles, right? In our health or relationship, whatever it is, but through struggles come strengths. And people didn't talk about this as much. And, you know, I probably have a post-traumatic, you know, stress from it, going through brain injury after brain injury. There's also post-traumatic growth, which you know, like a lot of it's not as widely talked about, but there's some people that go through immense amount of trauma and difficulty and challenge, but they come out of it actually more empowered, that they say to themselves that because of going through this, I found a new strength, I found my superpowers, I found a new meaning in my life, I found a new level of commitment, I found a strength, a mission, if you will. And they wouldn't, just a lot of them attest that they wouldn't trade that experience, no matter how painful it was at the time, for anything. And I find that growing up with reading challenges, and you know, I couldn't read for an extra 3 years. I pretended how to read.
Whoa,
you know, and it's like the imposter syndrome. It's like they have this image of how they want to be projected to the world. And then they have this image of what they fear they are, right. And then they have their real who they are. But I think a lot of people are suffering and overloaded and overwhelmed, and they're depleted because they're trying to hold these images in place, you know, and then be themselves also as well in different contexts. So that's why I love you, because you are the same on camera and off. And there's a congruency, there's an authenticity that's there. And I feel like a lot of people expend unnecessary amounts of energy trying to hold up this image of their ideal self to the world. And then they have this image that they fear so it's gonna be revealed to somebody else. And so growing up as a kid who couldn't read, I would pretend I understood things. Like teachers would explain things, and I didn't want to be the only one who didn't understand, and I would pretend, but in private I was really suffering and struggling. And so, you know, it's one of those things where you wonder why. Like my 2 biggest challenges growing up were learning and public speaking.
So crazy. Which
is, the universe has a weird sense of humor, because that's what I do for my mission now. And so it's interesting how things work.
How did you push through that? Because so as somebody who's seen you speak publicly, you're so good at it. Like you have so much energy and enthusiasm and projected confidence, even if you're like secretly overcoming something. How do you go through the dark time of feeling like you've been identified as the kid with the broken brain, really struggling, truly, like how do you get your self-talk going in a positive direction? Like everything would be pushing back against you.
Yeah, I think, so I even get nervous with doing things like this, and you know that, you know, even being on camera or having my picture taken, or there's still this residual. I always get butterflies, incredible amounts of butterflies before I go on stage every single time. How I get through it, I mean, we've talked about previously about mindset and about the importance of having a growth mindset. And I always talk about the second G for me is grit.
And these are the 3 Gs of the superhero.
Right. Yeah. And I think having a powerful mindset, being unstoppable, or just having the ability to go and succeed, whatever success is for you, you have to be growing, because if you're not growing, then you're just backsliding, right? But you also need a level of grit, and I think grit, just like growth, is a muscle. It's something that you need to sharpen through challenge, because through the challenge you get all the change that comes from it. I would say that if I'm effective having an impact on stage, and we all have a stage of our life, whether it's on a physical stage or just going through our day, right. That I challenge my grit and my ability to persist. I feel like that the most successful people on the planet that having the level of impact that they want to have to go through challenges, and it's just like the hero's journey that we've talked about many times. And so how I get myself through it, I monitor my self-talk, because I think that's important. I feel like with a name like Quick, you have to be a runner, right? And so I had to be a runner back in school, and to be careful getting speeding tickets and everything else like that. But I was reading a book years ago on preparing for a marathon, and one of the chapters, again, was on the psychology of it, and it said this verbatim, because I'm the memory expert. It said, your brain is like a supercomputer, and your self-talk is a program that will run. So if you tell yourself you're not good at remembering names, you will not remember the name of the next person you meet, because you program your supercomputer not to. And now I don't think the brain is like a supercomputer. I think it's a weak metaphor for what it is, because this is like a living computer that could do so much more and has different capabilities. But I would say that your self-talk is important, and it is the program that will run. And I always tell people to keep it positive, keep it empowering, because your mind is always eavesdropping on your self-talk. Right? And you have to be careful what you say to yourself, because it's this unconscious command. So I would be very careful, like when I get nervous, or I feel like I think some of the most successful people live at the edge of their limits, and they play there also as well. And so whenever I feel in my nervous system, I feel like I can't do it, then I feel like I really must do it, because I feel like how we do anything is how we do everything.
When did you have that realization that you could overcome some of the fears by knowing what your motives were?
You've had many guests address this, and I really do feel, and congratulations, with Mel and Simon, those videos are like, hundreds of millions of people watch it. And I feel like I was having this conversation. I did a talk in Silicon Valley, and afterwards Bill Gates comes up to me, and I asked him what superpower he could read one, and he's like, the ability to read faster. And I was like, oh, I could totally help with that. And I believe in reading, and I know you're an avid reader, and we share that commonality. Leaders are readers. But we're talking about the future education, and I was taking the approach from adult learning theory and brain science, and he was approaching it from more technology and scale. And somebody who was listening asked the question saying, is there anything missing? What's missing absent theory and technology? And we were talking about it, and we came to the conclusion is understanding human motivation. Because motive matters, right? And what drives us. I always tell people that there's this success formula. I subscribe to it. I call it H cubed, that it goes from your head to your heart to your hands. Especially in the personal development space, or what they teach about goal setting. You could affirm things in your head, or think things in your head, or visualize things in your head. But if you're not acting with your hands, there's something that's missing, right? There's an incongruency there. And what I tell people is check in with the second H, which is your heart, which is the symbol of emotion, the energy of motion. And so I feel like that's the fuel that fuels the car, that gets you to take action for something. And I do believe what got me through it is figuring out what my why was, right? I don't want people to suffer the way I did. If I can do anything about it, for me, it's like no brain left behind, right? Because I live with that identity for so long. And my message to people, whether it's on stage or on the podcast or anything, is that we are more than what we're demonstrating, that we've been sold this lie, that people are taught through school. Like when I do these demos and I on stage memorize 100 names and words and numbers forwards and backwards, and it appears effortlessly. I always tell people, I don't do this to impress you. I do this to express to you what's really possible, because the truth is everyone can do this too, and so much more. Apply towards creativity and focus and flow and problem solving and thinking and really overcoming the biggest challenges of their life, and maybe even the world. The challenge is we were taught a lie. We were taught a lie that somehow our intelligence, our potential, our learning, our memory somehow is fixed, or creativity is fixed, or thinking is fixed, like our shoe size. And what we've discovered, as you know, more about brain science in the past 2 decades, we've discovered more than the previous 2,000 years. And what we know is that we're grossly underestimating its our own capacity to be able to grow, to be able to contribute, to improve our intelligence and our influence and our impact. And I want to kind of pull the veil behind and just say, hey, this is about transcending. This is about ending the trance that we're not good enough, that we're not smart enough, that we're not this genius, and telling the truth. And the truth is, we're faster and we're smarter than we think. And not just to be able to memorize things, but be able to really solve significant challenges. And maybe that these challenges that we're going through are the lessons that we need to learn the most. And then some people who learn those lessons feel compelled to be able to share that voice with other people. So it's not just one candle, we just can set things ablaze.